Hello, this is Eddie Elguera with In the Beginning Legends Talk. Uh, since history is being made with skateboarding in the Olympics, I wanted to go back to the beginning where pool and competition started. And so we've had the opportunity. I talked with Christian Asoy and then Brad Bowman. Now I'm going to ask Salba to come on. We're going to ask him, request him to join us. And then he's going to come on and we're going to talk about the beginning. So, all right, here it goes. Salba, I'm set. Just join in and then we can get going. Hey, what's up, Salba?
Hey,
Cool.
you see me okay?
Yep, I can see you. Stoked. I see that you were just finished surfing, so you're
Yeah, I'm still in Newport. I'm in the car.
sweet. Hey, thank you for taking time. And actually, the Olympics just happened last night for the girls, the bowl and park. It's amazing to see where skateboarding has come. But I want to ask you because you were part of the very first Hester Series, winning that contest, the very first contest, and still shredding today, still amazing in pools. I wish I'd get a little invite every now and then, but just throwing it out. But no, it's amazing that even from that time, winning the very first contest, the progression of where skateboarding has come. But I just want to ask you, I mean, I want you kind of going into it. Did you know a lot of the pros or did you see them in the magazines? I just want to hear from your perspective going to that first contest, what it was like, and just go for it.
Yeah, I was watching yours and Brad's. I thought that was pretty nice. It was cool, like listening to some stuff Brad had to say.
Yeah.
How I kind of remember how I'm going down is prior to them having the contest, we had all skated on the park teams, and that's kind of how I remember how the whole thing even started. Was us skating for these park teams and having these park team contests between the parks.
Yeah.
And this is prior to ASPO. This is prior to all that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't know even how that even happened. If the skate park owners got together and say, hey, we need to make skateboard teams and blah, 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 blah. Well, like Pipeline had a team, like Reseda had a team, Skatopia had a team, and so on. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I remember meeting some of these guys prior to the pro contest at these skateboard contests.
But did they have, even though they had the park teams, I don't think they had any bowl contests, did they? Or
No,
did
they didn't have bowl contests per se, but they had
they just had
kind of contests at the parks, kind of within the skate
okay.
parks. And that's kind of how I remember it happening. Like that's how I remember meeting some of these guys. We didn't have they didn't have like a set. Like we would just go to Reseda and skate. Like all we would skate with those guys. I don't remember if they had a contest or not. I thought there was, but I just remember like the competition between the park teams was kind of cool. And that's
Yeah.
kind of how I met a lot of. I mean, that's how I met Shreddy Repas. That's kind of remember how I met Brad. I remember meeting Arthur Vieco that way, and then down in OC meeting some of the guys down there, and so on. But again, I was in a special position because people were coming to ride the Badlands.
Yeah.
And in those days, we had Baldy Pipe, we had 6th Street Wave, and we had El Pool. So at that time frame, I remember meeting like Kevin Anderson for the first time, the Worm, and
Yeah.
his whole crew. And his crew had like Greg Ayers and a little bit later that Doug Schneider was hanging out with those guys. But originally it was like Steve Forrest, the Worm, Greg Ayers, Waldo was with them here and there. And I remember a couple of those guys had cameras and videos, like movie cameras. So they were shooting footage of that. And then at that time frame too, I was kind of hanging out with Tay a little bit. Liga Heimer was like more my mentor in the Badlands, so to speak, because he played in my baseball team. He was on my Little League team.
Oh, sweet.
And so I knew him from my Little League team too, but we both skated, and I knew he was like the brother. He was a little bit older than me, but the guy who turned me on skating, Bob Ozone, his brother Gary, kind of hung out with Lee a little bit too. So that's kind of how I met him. You know what I mean? So I met some of these guys prior to this all happening. And again, we saw them at El Pool, we saw them at Baldy Pipe, we saw them at 6th Street Wave. So I didn't meet everybody though. So that was kind of cool. And then the thing I remember too is the first week we went down to Spring Valley. I remember the first weekend it rained.
Yeah.
I remember them canceling the contest, and they didn't have it the week they were supposed to have it. And then when that happened, I remember meeting like Pineapple and like Steve Cathy and like Dennis Martinez, but I don't know how it was, but me and Pineapple kind of hit it off.
Yeah.
And then I remember I thought I remember he either stayed at my house or I stayed at his house at that time frame, and then from there, I was cognizant about what they were doing. You know what I mean? So in
So,
San Diego, I guess, were a little bit different than us because they were more in the industry. They had GNS down there,
yeah.
Skateboarder Magazine based down there, Tracker Trucks was from down there. So you had some of these guys that were supporting that scene at the same time. So I was kind of in a very lucky place that I got to see all this stuff kind of happening at the same time. You know what I mean?
Now, so when you went down there, obviously the park, I don't know how long it was open because I remember Henry saying he tried to get parks that were new, so people really didn't have an advantage.
Yeah, I
But
remember that kind of happened a little bit too.
now, so then Pineapple and Dennis Martinez and Steve Cathy, some of those locals there. Now, did they have it kind of like, oh man, these guys already have the pool down, or did you?
Oh
How
yeah,
much?
they definitely did. Pineapple and Dennis by far at that point were the guys down there to beat.
Yeah,
And going into that contest, especially when it rained out that first weekend, and we actually kind of saw each other all for the first time and saw what each other had. Those guys had some kind of things going like, wow, that guy just did a backside air right there. That is insane. Like Dennis Martinez and Pineapple were probably the first two guys outside of me seeing, like, say, Stropel
yeah,
and Tay try to do backside airs.
yeah,
Because you got to remember at this time frame too, there were no tricks.
yeah.
You know,
So
what I mean, that's the thing. The
that time
first
was,
contest,
yeah,
it was carves, slides, and maybe a bunny hop air, maybe. You know what I mean? And that was about that. There wasn't too much, and so
yeah,
so looking back, when you kind of look at the contest now and you see it, it's almost kind of like comical, to be honest with you, some of the stuff we're doing, because it's not really that much.
yeah, yeah,
But you got to remember too, this is the one thing that people fail to realize that makes it so interesting, is the equipment we were riding.
yeah,
The equipment was so kind of crazy. And when Brad touched on this, Brad, for the most part, most people were riding small trackers.
yeah.
And if you weren't sponsored by Tracker, you weren't getting mid tracks.
Mm.
Now, me, I didn't ride trackers in the first contest. I rode Gullwings.
Yeah, I saw like in the picture, like the one that I posted,
Yeah, yeah.
and you had a little lapper there.
Yeah, and I had the little lapper because I saw Stacy do that, and I thought that was cool. And Stacy did it, and then Kurt Kimball did it. And I wanted to learn lip slides like those guys did, but I couldn't do lip slide on coping, especially in those days. I mean, I did them on a round lip at Pipeline,
Yeah, yeah,
but I didn't do it. I didn't do it yet there. You know what I mean? There's no way. But yeah, it was such a crazy time frame because, number one, the equipment was different. You had to get all the equipment and deal with equipment, and equipment was changing weekly.
mm.
And again, Brad touched on the pool being slippery. The pool was slippery as shit, I remember being.
Wow,
And I remember riding yo-yos because they were grippier than most wheels.
yeah,
And that's why I rode yo-yos. But most people were riding all their like factory wheels. Like all the Sims guys were riding those. But I remember most of the people rode Kryptonics too because they were one of the only wheels that could work that weren't sliding out.
wow.
You know what I mean?
I said that's when Brad told me that, I didn't realize because it looks, as a kid, I'm looking in the magazines, and I've seen the contest, seen the pictures of the contest, which is months later, and the pool looked perfect. I don't know, was it kinky? I mean, was it pretty good in terms of?
I remember Spring Valley being pretty good. I remember there was one little jolt on the left wall, I believe. Wasn't that bad, but overall, the Spring Valley pool was a pretty good, thing to ride. And now there wasn't like a tail drop like nowadays. You could roll into it, so to speak. So most of the pools in those days featured a roll-in feature, so you didn't have a tail drop. Tail drop wasn't really. I mean, there was the tail drop happened at that contest, but it was so new. They're like, what the hell's that?
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I remember Steve Cathy doing it, and he didn't even call it a tail drop. He called it a bomb drop.
Bomb
Like,
drop.
dude, do that thing again. What's that bomb thing you're doing? That bomb drop, the bomb, whatever. Do that shit again. That was crazy. What is that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then again, like Doug Schneider was the first guy to roll in.
Yeah.
I think people were rolling in probably maybe on round lips, but no one got credit for that. But he did it over coping, and it was like, dude, that was like a mind blower. And like the thing is, I just remember all the stuff was all over the decks. You couldn't even walk on the decks or roll on them at all. I remember we kind of had, hey man, can you back up so we can kind of roll on the deck a little bit so Doug could do his thing? Because I remember the first time we tried to do it, like he hit a hail bale and he kind of fell over and he couldn't do it, and it was kind of messed up. And I remember even Steve Cathy trying to put up his tail like to do the bond drop and stepping like on a piece of hay or something like, and hey man, can you scoot that back just a little bit? It was such like a, I can't. It was so new that everyone was just clamoring for these shots. There were so many photographers and video guys, and I mean, everybody's just in each other's face, and it was just paparazzi. Even though there wasn't a lot of people there, kind of, but everybody who was there was just everybody's in the way. You know what I mean? So that was a pain in the ass. And for me, like, you know how I like to roll in and out on stuff. I wasn't quite doing that quite yet, but like, man, like, get out of the way. We need some room. You know what I mean? Like, let us have some breathing room. Like, you're in my space. You know what I mean? So.
What did you?
I just had to pop on here and say that our friend Jeff Ament from Pearl Jam said that you have rad hair.
Oh,
I just got done surfing. That's why it looks funny. Thank you.
Got lots of gray in there and stuff.
Thanks, Jeff. I love Jeff. He's the best.
Guys have had major eyeglass frame points. You guys are all
How you doing? Good to see you, Don.
good to see.
So anyway, anyway, Brad was saying, Bowman was saying that, yeah, they had the hay bales at the, like, behind the coping at first, so you couldn't really roll out, so they had to move them all back and stuff. Wow.
Everything was just so smashed in and like smothering. And then the other thing too is how the hay bales kind of made it a little bit, even though it was kind of in the winter, it made it hot, and it made your grip tape kind of like you were getting stuff all over your shoes and trying to wipe your shoes off. All, you know what I mean? Because there was just stuff everywhere. You know what I mean? Whether it was the hay or the banners or people's like trash or whatever, there was just stuff all over the place. You know what I mean?
That's cool. Hey, so then let me, before we talk about the contest, because like the runs of the contest, but I want to go back because Pipeline, when that was built, some of the other parks that had vert was I think probably one of the first one was it Skater Cross, the flow run that's kind of more that had kind of vert to it.
Yeah.
And then they built that one pool at Concrete Wave.
The little dinky crazy one.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like the Fruit Bowl, but it was like crazy, like.
Oh, it wasn't even close to the Fruit Bowl. It was a piece of crap.
Yeah. So then from you, when you guys, because I went to Pipeline early on, and I was just a kid and nobody knew who I was, but I would skate. My brother broke his arm the first time.
Ooh.
Took me, and it was like bonk. We went to the hospital there. It was crazy. So I'm sure a lot of people broke their arms and stuff, but because it was so big and so gnarly. But did that help you out a lot, just knowing that? Kind of when you're going to that bowl, it's like, oh wow, this is easy.
Yeah, I mean, for me, people, the whole endurance thing always comes in mind with the 2-minute run with me. And so number one, we were riding Pipeline and we were used to bigger walls. Number one, that was a big advantage. But number two, my biggest advantage prior to me skateboarding, I played sports a lot, and I was like a full like baseball guy, soccer guy, football.
You were
I also played in college. I mean, in high school. So my dad had me on his program since I was 8 years old to do this stuff, and all the coaches who were like our coach for Pop Warner and all that stuff were like semi-pro players and college players. And even in those days, they had us like running 3 miles of practice in the heat. Yeah. So when we played our games, we can, outperform the other team. So I always took that stuff to a complete, even though I really didn't think of myself as a jock, I was definitely in that world. I always hated the jocks, and I always fought with them because I didn't think like them. Yeah. But I came from that kind of like world, so to speak. And to this day, I mean, you guys all know what I do. That's still my thing, where I kind of do my exercise and my yoga and all that kind of crud. Yeah. But it all stems back from then. So I think number two, Pipeline, and just me doing all this stuff really set the tone for my endurance. You know what I mean? And I didn't have any problem doing a 2-minute run, to be honest with you. Even in these days, I don't have a problem doing a minute run. You know what I mean? But the problem is just to stay consistent and do all the stuff you did as a kid, as we're adults now in our 50s, which let's be honest, it gets harder and harder to do in your 50s
Oh
to do all
yeah,
the stuff you did when you're a kid. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, you lose a little couple things, and it's not that you lose it, dude. You know what I think more than it is the mental aspect where you get hurt sometimes. And personally, I'm so sick of getting hurt. I don't
yeah.
want to break any more bones anymore. So sometimes, like, you're waiting. Hey, man, do I want to go do this? Am I going to get broken off? And a lot of times you can't think that way. Because if you do, you're going to get hurt again anyhow. But that
Yeah.
was always my mindset back in those days. And even to this day, like, I figured, hey, if you got a strong body, you got a strong mind. You know what I mean? And I've always felt that way.
I know. For me, I'll go out and skate, and if I miss 2, 3 days, 3 days, a week, and then I'm coming back, and it's almost I have to get that muscle memory back. It's like it doesn't come as quick for me. So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, let me get used to this again.
Yeah.
But so coming back to the contest, now that you're going to be taking some runs, 2 minutes now, even in today's skating, for somebody to take 2 minutes with all the tricks and things that they can do now, fakie tricks and carves, and imagine back then that, well, like you said, maybe a couple people were doing some airs, but it's mostly carves and grinds. So 2 minutes, what were people thinking? Like some of the other guys probably thinking, man, this is a lot.
Well, here's the other thing. Now I'm not sure if anybody had a game plan going into that contest.
Yeah.
But one of my guys kind of, hey, sat me down as a look. You get a point for every wall you hit,
Uh,
and you can skate longer than all these guys. And your endurance is so good, dude. All you gotta do is stand up, bolt, and just do your thing.
yeah.
Just keep going. Just don't fall. As long as you don't fall and you keep grinding and carving and doing what you do, you're gonna accumulate all kinds of points. And so I actually went in there thinking that.
Yeah.
I didn't, my game plan, like, dude, don't fall. Just keep consistent, number one. And number two is just keep going. And so, to be honest with you, that when it was all said and done, and they called my name and I actually won, I was just as surprised as everybody else. Because in my opinion, I didn't win. In my opinion, who won the contest? It was Olsen. Olsen was skating better than me, in my opinion. And so, for that matter, I mean, I was going faster than Mike Weed, but he was skating pretty damn good too, I thought. You know what I mean? So, at that point, it was like the fluke, and this guy doesn't deserve it. Who's this guy, this upstart? And dude, believe me, I got all kinds of grief for that win. And I went back to the house as happy as I was that I had a check for
Yeah.
$1,000 and show my mom and all that kind of stuff. And on the inside, I was kind of crying because everybody didn't believe that I was good.
Mm.
And I was kind of a crummy skater. And I was, to be honest with you, on the inside, I was kind of crushed. I was kind of like, wow. And then, when you're kind of young and you're kind of starting to break anything, and you got your ego kind of part, all of that. And you're reading the magazine and all that. And then, oh, this guy didn't deserve, blah, blah, blah. And then, like, after a while, you kind of start, wow, maybe I didn't deserve this thing. Like, wow. But at the same time, I mean, hey, I'll take it. I'll take it then. I take it now. It's the same kind of thing. But here's the one thing I always kind of looked at. I always wanted to redeem myself.
Mm.
And personally, I did. At the very last contest at Big O, in that same series, I won again.
Yeah.
And I was the only guy to actually win 2 contests in the series and all that stuff, Gold Cup, whatever. And so that being said, that's kind of a cool little thing saying, hey, you know what? Spring Valley, whatever, upstart, you didn't really take me serious. But by the time I hit Big O, like, they knew, okay, this Alba guy's real.
Yeah.
And that's where Brad kind of touched again on the whole consistency thing. And that was kind of my thing then. That's why I was Law Machine, because I was finishing consistently in the top 4 in all the contests for 3 or 4 years straight. Prior to anybody, prior to yourself, prior to, Gab, prior to all that. I'm not saying, hey, that's my little thing, but at the same time, it's something I can look back now, because we can't change the history. We can't change the past. It's all there for everybody to see at this point. You know what I mean? And I don't really try to revel in the past too much. I'm always about that's the future and all. But looking back, it's kind of cool that we did do that. And when knowing myself and yourself and some of these guys did set the tone for things in today's world. And that's kind of cool to actually look at it that way. I've never really looked at it that way before. So that's kind of a cool thing to do.
And that's why, I did the Elgato Classic and wanted to do it just because I want people to know, even like the Worm, he may not get a lot of credit, but he was rad. Or, these guys that were back around that era that just laid the foundation, pioneers, just like yourself. But not only those that were in the contest, but those that kind of laid that foundation for today. I mean, history was being made back then, but it was no big deal. But now, today, it wouldn't be happening if it wasn't at the beginning. So I'm stoked. I love talking to you guys and love hearing about history and stuff. And I kind of feel the same thing kind of with you. When I first turned pro, I was kind of crushed when I was starting to win because a lot of the people that I looked up to, they're like, I wanted to make them proud or like, oh man, look at this kid, he's ripping and stuff. But it was more like they were jealous or like, we don't want you here. And it's like, it crushed me because I was thinking, man, I want to try to prove myself to them. Can I be accepted to your tribe?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
let's face it, hey, we're all kids. There is
Yeah.
a lot of that ego to it. You know what I mean? And you got people saying in your ear you're the best. You got the magazines telling you the best. You got these photographers telling you the best. You got your sponsors on your team managers saying you're the best. And we all got fed this, every one of us. Let's face it. You know what I mean? And so when you get on that mode, and you kind of like, man, hey, I'm actually pretty good at this stuff. And, and personally, I never thought I was the best, to be honest with you. I know I was good, and I
Yeah.
know I'm still good. But I never really thought of myself as the best because I wasn't the best. There was always guys, even when you think you're the best, there's always going to be someone better than you.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
when you think you're the best, and then all of a sudden you get that mindset, and then you get crushed because you're setting yourself up for failure, so to speak. So what I kind of figured out, it took me a while to figure this out, was just to be yourself. And when you be yourself and you're doing your thing, people will either respond to it or they won't.
Yeah.
And in my case, I kind of got some good response, and then not only with skating, we took it to the music thing and all the punk rock stuff that we kind of get into too. So yeah, I mean, it was just about us making our own little thing and making our scene,
Yeah.
and then from us making our own little scene within our skate scene, then people started responding to that too, and then somehow we're these legends and icons now that we never really set out to be.
Yeah.
Let's face it. What I mean, when you would ask me if I was 18 if I'd still be skating now, I would have said no. You know what I mean? If you would have asked me when I was 18 if someone's going to do the Hot Wheel loop like Dwayne and Tony and some of these guys, I would say no.
Yeah.
When you ask me when I'm 18 if people were doing 20-foot airs and riding a mega ramp, I'd say no. Because in those days, I thought it was impossible, to be honest with you. I didn't think that we could do even stuff I could do today was possible, to be honest with you. So that's the thing. Skating is always just this mind-blowing deal, whether you're a vert guy, a pool guy, a street guy, whatever. And the whole thing is just moved and been shaken for so much that the coolest thing is that we had a big part in kind of like helping steer this along. And that again is really, really damn cool to me. And, and that we're just having this conversation and we're still friends for all these years, and just all the ups and downs we've all had together. And you can look back with that, like, we can be like someone else we know and rag at each other all day and say, hey, you fucking blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But I don't go that route. I'm not trying to be a negative guy. I've been the angry guy. You guys all know. They've seen me throw my helmet. You've seen me do all that shit, and I've been known for that for a long time. But at the same time, we all try to grow up, and I'm trying not to be that guy. I'm trying to be more of my yoga dude now, just trying to be more positive. But I'll say this: when you do that route, things start kind of going your way a little bit more, and they start kind of happening. You get more opportunities, and that's the cool thing too.
Yeah.
So,
And so, having a positive outlook on life instead of being so negative. And I think what was so hard for a lot of people over the last year and a half with everything that went on in our nation and the world and stuff, it's like the people that have the negative attitudes, it's just not good. It's just, you got to have a positive attitude. You got to have faith and look towards the future.
yeah, whatever your road is, hey, you can't keep going down that rabbit hole, man, because you're just gonna keep sinking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's my thing. Again, like, I like creating my artwork, my music, all that kind of stuff. I like to skateboard. I like to surf. I do my yoga. I like to ride my bike. All the stuff I do is kind of like helping me like make my skateboard career longer, so to speak, so I can keep skating.
Yeah.
And all these things I do are always revolve around it so I can skate. Now, am I getting any more contests at this point? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, if they had comic contests, maybe I would do it again, possibly. I love skating with all you guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I miss skating with all the boys together like we all would do. That's the one thing I miss more than anything.
Yeah.
But at the same time, with all this COVID stuff's going on, I still went and do it on my pools and did all my thing. And I'm still going outside and I'm still surfing and doing what I do. And so I'm still doing my thing. So that's cool. You know what I mean? But it all stems back to what we did back in the beginning. Again, you know what I mean? Like that was like set the tone for my whole life. You know, and again, I'm going to be a skateboarder. Like even when I was 18, I don't want to be a skateboarder my whole life. But it's something I can look now like, hey, man, if it wasn't for skateboarding, I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't have all the friends. I wouldn't be able to travel all over the world and do the stuff we do. So I owe skateboarding everything in my life. As far as I'm concerned, that's the best thing that's ever happened to me, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know what you were talking about, not imagining like 20-foot airs and loops and all that stuff. And I was telling Christian, and I began to think about this, and I was telling Donna last night when I was watching the Olympics, I said, it's amazing. The Olympics, every sport, I mean, I don't know, most of the sports, they have, you can only go so far, but you can be good at that one, whether it's archery, whether it's running, whether it's gymnastics or certain things. But skateboarding, in the next 4 years when it's in the Olympics again, it's going to be changed so much more because that's what I love about skateboard, because it's always progressing, and it takes, and I think it's kind of like so much different than all these other sports in the Olympics, because it will evolve even greater and even expand or whatever. So what is your thoughts maybe on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think skating is always evolving. Now, personally, do I think we need the Olympics? No.
No.
I think they need us way more than we need
Oh,
them.
sure.
And granted, for the first thing we saw on the street stuff, hey, that's awesome and all, but that's not my thing. And the street league's not really my thing. That's not like street skating. That's like, it's almost like bowl skating, not pole skating. And so, I mean, when you put in that platform in that arena, it almost kind of generalizes it, so to speak, even though it's completely awesome still. But the format changes from what the real life thing out there. And that's one thing about skating is it's real life. And even with me skating the pools I skate, you're not going to get that anywhere else. You know what I mean? And that's one thing I think is so cool about skating. It's like you're going to get the real street skating, the real, you know. So there's going to be people who are going, hey, the Olympics is lame, blah, blah, blah. So, but past all that, one thing I do like about the Olympics is going to make it more acceptable for all of us. And the more acceptable that skating becomes for all of us, that means we're going to get less trouble for doing it. So now, there's always half of me that, you know, I love skate parks. But the other half of me is always not trying to play by the rules and do my backyard thing where I'm kind of fighting the cops and neighbors and all that, because I thrive on that a little bit too. But that to me is the real skating also. But my version of skating, maybe not someone else's version of skating. You know what I mean? Because they don't want to deal with the police. They don't want to deal with getting caught. They don't want to deal with trespassing and all that kind of crap that goes with it. And I get that. But to me, that's my take, and that's why I love skating, that part of it.
Yeah.
The other half is, you know, some of the other stuff too, the tricks and all that. That's, you know, so there's so many aspects to it. You can't just pigeonhole it. You know what I mean? And even all the tricks they're doing, like, even my wife's all like, you know, they're doing some tricks. They're calling the Caballeros trick. They're doing like an El Gario. Like, well, dude, so it's so cool that you have friends that they name these things after. That's so cool. And then they were saying a G twist, and I'm going, man, there you go. There's your like little.
I told Donna that.
Even though it's a gay twist, we all know it's a gay twist. But to be politically correct, they say it's a G twist. So I'm all, there you go, right there. That's kind of lame, right there. They should just call it what it is. I mean, they're playing our music the whole time, like, you know. So that kind of like, so you know what I mean. So there's always that a little bit too. So I mean, there's the pros and cons. Hey, but that's the cool thing about skating, man. It's one way is not the right way, and one way is not the wrong way. It's what you want for yourself, and that's what's so cool about it. Everybody's got their own little take on it, and that's why it's such a nice thing. And that's just so crazy to me. Like with someone like China, they don't really say, hey, you get to be an individual, but they want their skaters to be like us and do the whole thing. But it's such an irony, you know what I mean? Because it's not how they really live. So anyhow, you know, it's just, that's way above my pay grade. Don't even go there. But it's just, you know, skating is just a cool thing that we all like and that we all enjoy. I think it's one of the best things in the world. And personally, you know, I think it's cool that we did all these contests in the old days and kind of set this whole precedent for all these people nowadays. You know what I mean? But yeah, so it's just kind of, it's a weird thing.
Another cool thing too that I love is that in skateboarding, where probably a lot of the Olympic sports, they're like enemies because we're fighting for our country. Well, you're rooting for every country. I'm rooting. There's so many guys in all the different countries, Brazil and all these other countries you're rooting for, and the camaraderie and the friendships on the court, where probably some of the sports they're probably intense, like, wow, we're against these guys or whatever.
Yeah. So, like F Russia. You know what I mean? Like when we were kids, I mean, you know, that was the whole premise, you know what I mean? But hey, the one thing I really liked I liked when all the girls like giving each other just hugs and high
Yeah,
fives, and one of them bailed. And hey, because we all, and let's face it, you know, contests are contests. They're fun, and they're cool to go to, but if you're in that final, any one of those guys can win the contest. Let's face it. Even in our final, with the 8 of us, 10 of us, all of us are capable of getting really rad and winning.
yeah,
So just the fact that we're all on the same page and the same kind of platform. Now, then again, have I always thought I got what you got? No. Did I have what Josue got? No. I got no. I don't have any of that stuff on one hand, but on the other hand, I got what Salba's got. So, but that's what makes skating so cool—the apples and oranges of it. You know what I mean? And on one day, like, hey, there's one day I could be on fire, and I make lip size around the corner, I make my Andress, and I make my indies, and all that stuff. And I've had those days.
yeah,
You know what I mean? But again, it's just a contest. Some days it's who's on that day, as
yeah,
opposed to who's the best. Because that's the thing is there is no best. Again, it's just who's on. So in that respect, it's kind of cool that you get a goal for your country and all that stuff. And then, to be honest with you, I was rooting for the Japanese and Brazilians, because when I go there and see those guys, and we had this conversation yesterday. I kind of told you about this. That in my opinion, the Americans take some of this stuff for granted. They don't work as hard as the other guys, and that's why they're not placing as well. And maybe you can talk shit all you want on me, all you can say, but it's about how much you want it.
yeah,
And you want it, you have to have dedication, desire, and determination. And the Japanese, and the Brazilians, I mean, all the skaters have it, let's face it.
yeah.
But they have it a little bit more because it's their culture they're in too. Now, are all the American skaters doing what Brazil, like Prado's doing right now? Are they working out like him? Are they getting personal trainers and making them so stronger so when they fall, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what Pato's doing is like almost like what I do, but he's taking another whole level. He's taking a whole other notch. So, in my opinion, I need to go hang out with Pato, and that's going to step my game up. When I
Oh,
see those guys doing that, I go, dude, that makes me stoked. Like, wow, like they're getting rad.
yeah,
So that's why I kind of like, dude, I'm pulling for those guys. Now, I know Jagger Eaton does that a little bit, but do some of the Americans do that? No, they just skate. And that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's got their own little training methods and stuff, but I'm just saying that people who really are doing good are the people who want it more. That's, you know, and
and I think things like this, it's going to push people to like realize, hey, man, I need to up my game. And that's really, it's kind of like when I came in the Hesta Series 2, did like the Elgario and started doing like front rocks and different things. It kind of pushed other skaters to, you know, because I think as it got to that place of rock and rolls and airs and some
yeah,
things, when I came in and Dwayne and some of the others like started doing tricks, it's like, and that's kind of like inspired probably the next generation. So I think things like this could help launch. It's like, oh wow, I see. I don't want to just be relaxed now. I want to push it and go further to the next level.
yeah. I mean, and let's face it, when you're in competition, you have to. I mean, if you're going to be those guys trying to steer that, you have to come up with like almost like a new trick every time, like it was. And even for us in the beginning, even like to say the first Hester wasn't too many tricks, but the second Hester,
Yeah,
there's starting more tricks around it. Even myself, I started kind of doing more things and like shuffles and rocks and roll 360s and 360 tail taps and airs and all those kind of combinations like that. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of cool too. You know what I mean? And I look back on some of my contest runs in the Hester, like where I do a massive error over the channel at Big O, like
mm-hmm.
in the Hester too. And like I
Yeah,
was probably doing some of the biggest errors in that contest, like
yeah,
over the channel at least. And
yeah,
I was like, dude, look at that. And I did a carve, and then I did an alley oop, and then I did a shuffle, and then I did a 360 rock and roll, and even some of the like combos I was putting together myself. Like, whoa, look at that! Like, wow. So we all we all put something on the plate, you know. And again, like, you know, I've never had a trick named after me, so to speak. I mean, I did a lane tail slide. I did make up the 360 rock and roll though, so that's kind of cool. And the shuffle, you know what I mean? That's one of my tricks. So, but hey, it's just kind of cool that we've all had our little input, and we've got some certain tricks that were our tricks that people still do in today's world. And you know, all the tricks in the '80s, I still think we all put all the tricks there. And
yeah,
every trick nowadays is the variation of what we did then. It's really hard to kind of come up with something super, super new. Maybe in
yeah.
the streets a little bit different, but as far as all the bowl stuff goes, you know what I mean? But
Yeah, it's pretty
even
much.
that, like all the switch stuff and the stuff backwards. I mean, Mike Weed was kind of doing that stuff. He was the first guy to do fakies and the first guy I ever saw do a 360. So just seeing some of that stuff then, and then seeing what the kind of guys would do with it now, you know what I mean? And 360, I mean, Mike Weed, I mean, when I saw him do that, it was blunt. Like, I saw Mike Weed had the first double kick board and tail on Hobie. I mean, you wrote for Hobie too, and I was like, how did you make that? And what's the reasoning behind that? You know, Steve, this is the future. You're gonna speak up. It'll be allow you to flip your board any way you want. You can kick flip your board. And again, remember when Mikey did shove-its?
Yeah.
So he did a shove-it one day in a pipe and up and with that board.
Oh,
And I'm like, dude, like, what's up with that board? And he's a watch. And he went and did a fake and he did a shove-it. And I'm doing, what the hell was that? Are you kidding me? And he just smiled. And he's all, that's the future of the double kick. And
wow.
so even then in 77, I saw him do this. And now we're all riding double kicks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of stuff was started then. It just maybe didn't come to fruition quite yet. But a lot of stuff that was then is now. And that's what's kind of cool. You know what I mean?
Sweet. Wow. Well, I'm going to, let me hold on. Don has something. Do you have something that you
Couple of
want
questions. You guys were talking about how with the Olympics that they're going to be pushing the envelope, but really you guys were the ones that were pushing the envelope first. And there was a question: who went the all-time highest in the full pipe? I'm talking. I guess they're talking about at Pipeline.
Gosh, that's a good question because, I mean, I've seen people go higher frontside than backside, and in the old days, when I was going pretty damn high too, I'd say,
Yeah, you were.
probably Worm, probably one of the highest guys I've ever seen go.
Wow.
I mean, at Pipeline there was lines on painted on the pipe.
Yeah, I remember.
Those painted lines, and 5 lines was, I think, red line. But if you got past 5, and if you were in 6 and 7, if you were in 7 lines, that's yellow line. If you went higher than 7, you were in black line. So that was the cool thing. We can actually see where you're at. And I have a photo of me going frontside on the black line.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And there's a photo of Worm, like on 7 black lines up that I've seen. Kurt Cordum, Kurt Kimball were 2 other guys. And then a little later when Miller started getting some power, he was another guy. And Mike Smith, I'd say some of the best pipe riders, you know, because you got the early guys in the 70s like Worm and Waldo. But as time kind of went on, then I'm thinking that you got myself and Tate Hunt and Liga Heimer and then Miller and Mike Smith, you know. There was a lot of guys you could throw out. Alva was a good guy. But probably the highest I ever saw anybody go was Worm, just to be honest with you there.
And talking about that is back then the equipment, doing it on the equipment that we had.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like another factor. Is like you guys don't even realize the things that we used to do on the equipment that we had was not good.
Yeah. And the one thing kind of cool in today's world, Ozzy sometimes will like bring out the old boards at these pool sessions and make everybody ride the old boards.
Oh, I know.
This is cool. And
Yeah.
like, wow. And then last time he had his Alba board, I went to the animal farm. And I got a couple drawings on the Alba board. I was, yes. But dude, it's hard.
Yeah.
Like thinking like you got to kind of ride it for like an hour to kind of get used to it again. You know what I mean? And doing errors and all the stuff we used to do is like, wow, like how do we do that in those days? But we did. You know, it's like any kid, whatever you put in front of them, they're going to make it work no matter how. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we made it work for ourselves and kind of figured it all out. And, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And that was a kind of cool thing. You know, the one thing I got to say too, real quick, just watching the girl contest yesterday, and when Sky kind of had her last run and kind of on the podium again.
Yeah.
Now, back in the old days, even the comedy contest, those places could move per heat.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And say there's 4 heats, and say like, you know, you're sitting pretty good after the first run, and now all of a sudden here comes Eddie's creeping up, and Lance is creeping up, and Hosoi's creeping up, and you know that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So that's the thing too, is once, you know, whenever he's kind of ripping, those things can change. And like, oh damn it, I found my Hendrick, man. If I make that Hendrick, I know I'm gonna get 6th place. Like I got, you know what I mean? Then you start kind of getting in that mode, and that's the one thing I have to say about what I thought about the girls yesterday, especially doing those last 3 runs. Like you kind of fall in a couple runs, and man, like you got to step up your game. You got to get in the top spot, so you got to make something else. So you had to go for it. Is what I'm kind of getting at. And she went for it. She went for it twice, and she kind of failed. But the third one she went for, she made it. And let's face it, we were all pulling for it. We've all been in that same position.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, dude, and like, come on, man. You know, I'm sure, like, hey, the one thing I like more than anything when we do these big comedy contests is when, you know, they say your name and everybody's rooting for you. And, you know, then you look and you see, oh, like, I see you on the deck, and I see Soy, and I see all the boys. And then I see everybody kind of like going like, yes, like a fist bump. Like, and because your bros are cheering for you, too.
Yeah.
It's one thing when, like, the crowd's cheering for you. But when you look on a deck and see all your peers cheering for you, then I gotta make this right here. Like, you know what I mean? So that's I just wanted to touch on that's what kind of drives the competition in between us. You know, even when we were kids, we used to grind each other. And granted, I used to do some pretty bad shit to you guys, and we all know that story. You know, Losi kind of did the thing, bang, back to me. But then again, in those days, we were kids. And
Yeah.
again, we were getting all this crazy shit from all these people. Like, and not that we hated each other. We all respect each other still. But it was a game. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Just like when me and Dwayne would make our V's on our arms and try to throw blood on everybody, freak everybody out at Oasis and stuff, and get them at McGill. And he's like, dude, what are you doing? I mean, and right there, we knew we had an advantage in our head because we freaked them out. It's just stupid games like that. We all play with each other, but
Yeah.
that's what makes us so sick at the same time because it's friendly competition on one hand, and at the end of it, we're all hugging each other too and saying, "Hey, what's up? Great job!" And just like the girls did, and that's what's so cool about skating. Whether you're black, Mexican, blue eyes, all that shit goes out the window.
Yeah.
And that's
Absolutely.
one thing. And that's one thing I had to say just real quick between me and you, and Caballero for that matter, is we're all not your quintessential blonde hair, blue eyed California kids,
Yeah.
and we're not from the beach. We're
Yeah.
from the valley.
Yeah.
So that's why I really like talking to you, and I've thought we put a stamp on skating because we weren't those guys who lived that kind of beach lifestyle. We were the other guys. That, hey, here you can do it like Steve, and you can do it like Eddie, and you can do it like Cav, and you can do it like some of these other guys who weren't white guys, so to speak. So another thing that I like in skating, I like all these different colors. I like when black kids skate. I like when
Yeah.
Mexican kids skate. I like all these different kids from Brazil and all that. That makes me cool because skating's about everybody. It's not just about rich, poor, whatever. You can be polka dot, you can be a Christian, you can be a Muslim. It doesn't matter. When
Yeah.
you're on your skateboard, that's all that matters. That wooden thing underneath you, and that's what's kind of cool about skating.
I like what you said about that, like me, you, and Cab, and just we weren't from the beach in the area, but I think also too, I think it inspired people in the Midwest, inspired people that weren't surfers or weren't by the beach, that they could still do good and be good in skating because it
Yeah,
was time. It was like Florida and then
yeah,
California and just the ocean areas, but then
yeah.
we were able to kind of continue that.
I mean, even Alba, he's from LA, and Alba. I mean, he's got a Spanish surname. Myself, you do, and I like that we're these Mexican American Mexican kind of like backgrounds,
Yeah,
and that to me just says, hey man, so I just know a lot of kids still doing what we did.
yeah,
And I talk to kids still to this day that like, hey man, if I wouldn't have saw what you did, we wouldn't have seen. So that's one thing that really makes me proud, even more than all the contest stuff. To be honest, with you, that we're still skating and we're skaters of color, so to speak. And
yeah.
I think that's one thing that really makes the whole skateboard world go around. And that's one thing I really like about that. We have that kind of background, and it's kind of cool.
You have one more question?
There were two other questions that if you guys want to talk about them or not. One is, what was your worst injury that you guys had? Secondly, which I like this question, do you guys want to see vert added in the Olympics in the future? So I'll leave you guys with those.
See what added?
Vert,
Vert.
I guess.
Yeah. So the first little question: how many times have I been hurt, and what's my worst injury? I say probably my two worst. I mean, I've been hurt a lot, and I've broken at this point 32 bones or fractures at this point, which is a lot. You know what I mean?
It's a lot.
I've broken the right wrist at least 4 times. I broke my left wrist at least 5 times. My right ankle twice. My left ankle at least 3 times. My kneecap, all that kind of stuff. I have no ACL. So I say probably my worst one's my ACL at Winchester. That knocked me out for a while. I couldn't skate for about almost 9 months to a year.
Yeah,
That's why I did. That's why I had a late entry into the Hester too.
oh yeah,
I
yeah.
was hurt. I had an ACL injury.
Okay.
And to this day, I have no ACL in my left knee.
Oh wow.
The doctors thinks I'm a freak because I have no ACL. I don't know how you do what you do with no ACL. It's a mind blower. So that and my collarbone, when I broke my collarbone probably like 3 or 4 years back at Fontana when my wheel came off, those are probably my two worst that I remember. No, I fell at Upland during the contest for the first Hester, and that's when I got 98 stitches in my head and got KO'd and concussed. I think you were there when that happened, maybe.
Yeah.
Practice that night.
A Hester series that.
Yeah. So that was another pretty good injury. So I'd say those are my top 3 injuries of all time. You know.
You know what
As far as
admire that.
Go
Remember
ahead.
that. And I think all of us back then, we didn't know any better, but you just came back, and I'm still going to skate. I'm still going to do it. Because I think that's the way we were. It's like, even though we were injured, we're going to jump in. We're going to do what we
Yeah,
can.
and it's funny you say that because you know what? I'm kind of stoked you talked about that because most people don't know I had a concussion. I wasn't supposed to skate in the finals Saturday. The doctor told me not to skate, and I went against the doctor's wishes and skated anyhow. And I skated the whole day, basically seeing double.
Wow.
I had a concussion. I was out of my mind. And I did so good the whole day. I qualified first all day
Yeah.
through the heats, through the to the quarterfinals, to the semifinals, even going to the finals. I was number one. I qualified first all day. I was on fire. Like no one's gonna beat me at my skate park. But by the end of the run and by the end of the day, I was so tired and just so out of it and just so concussed and seeing double that I actually ended up getting third. And I think Hirsch won that contest, but taking nothing around from him either because he was a great competitor and he was a
Gresham.
he was a oh yeah, there was Gresham. He was mind blower though, man. He was insane. You know what I mean? So that Gresham always blew my mind some of the shit that guy did, man. But as far as like now the Olympics, having vert in the Olympics, having like a vert ramp, why not? I think that's a big genre in skating now. It's been a big thing on the X Games and on the Mountain Dew Tour. They've always had a vert ramp along with the bowl stuff.
Yeah.
And personally, the more the better. I mean, for that matter, why don't you put downhill in it too?
Yeah. Yeah, that would slalom.
I mean, personally, who doesn't want to see you crash and burn downhill? It gets some of those GX guys from San Francisco there. Wow, that'd be insane. You know what I mean? I just think the more the better for skateboarding in the Olympics. And the one thing I don't like about the Olympics so far, about the skateboarding, they haven't been making it easy to watch. They're all pressing it all up. That skateboarding is going to save the Olympics all over. That's the press everywhere. The newspapers, on the news. But then when you go try to watch the skateboarding Olympics, you can't see it.
Yeah, I just got the Olympic app and I guess focused on that. Just that's the way
I did too. Eventually, that's what I wrote down and got. But again, they're showing just the finals. But for me, I like to see all the qualifying rounds. I want to see I want to see those 20 guys vying to get into the finals because that's kind of almost rad. Even when we do the combi contest, like those practice days and stuff are just almost better than the contest half the time. To be honest with you, you know what I mean? So, it is what it is. It's awesome that it's there, but they got to say gay twist though.
All right, Salba. Hey, thank you for taking the time, and I appreciate it. I appreciate you and all that you've done for skateboarding. And like I said, I want to honor the past, and we could champion the future, and as it's going on today. But love you, and let's.
Thanks. And hey, I want to say one thing real quick that the 8th Street pool you talked to us about and told us about a long time ago in San Bernardino. Yeah, I think it's still kind of happening. It's full of water right now, but we'll go pool skating soon, man. I just figured you didn't want to come out of your little place. And
no, I'd love to. I'd love to session.
You should go to Elsinore too. That place is super fun. We might go the Friday maybe.
All right, cool. All right.
Hey. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Have a good day. Thank you so much.
Those of you who are watching, coming up next at 1 o'clock is going to be Dave Hackett. So we'll see what Dave Hackett has to say.
Thank you.
Cab and then Olson. So talk to you later. We'll see you guys. Thanks.